Padre Pio looked directly into the eyes of the man, whom everyone considered a model Catholic, and uttered words no one expected to hear. He said, "You have never truly prayed in your entire life." The man stood there, paralyzed. He had attended Mass every Sunday for 40 years. He recited the Rosary every night. He fasted during Lent. But Padre Pio saw something no one else could see. He saw the man's soul, and what he witnessed there filled him with profound sadness. This story unfolded in San Giovanni Rotondo back in 1954, and it exposes one of the greatest dangers threatening Catholics today. It's not apostasy. It's not heresy. It's something far more subtle. It's the illusion of praying, when, in reality, the soul remains in absolute silence before God. Over the next few minutes, you'll uncover what Padre Pio actually saw within that man's soul. You'll understand why millions of Catholics around the world may be making the same mistake without realizing it. And you'll discover the method this stigmatized saint taught to transform empty prayer into a genuine dialogue with the Creator. But before we continue, I need to ask you a question that could completely change your spiritual life. When you pray, are you truly speaking with God, or are your words just sounds escaping your lips, while your mind wanders through 1,000 different thoughts? If you've ever caught yourself finishing a rosary without remembering a single word you prayed, pay close attention to what I'm about to reveal. John Baptist was regarded as the most devout Catholic in his town, a small community nestled in southern Italy, where everyone knew each other and where reputations were built over generations. Born in 1908, John grew up in a profoundly religious family. His father was the parish sacristan. His mother belonged to the secular Franciscan order. From childhood, John was raised to fulfill every precept of the church with absolute rigor. And he did, every Sunday without fail. He occupied the front row of the church, not just present, but always 15 minutes before Mass began. Always in his impeccable black suit. Always with his wooden rosary wrapped around his hands. He knew every prayer in Latin by heart. He knew every response in the Missal. He sang the hymns with a strong, clear voice. During Lent, while others made small sacrifices, John fasted with impressive severity, sustaining himself solely on bread and water throughout Holy Week. He woke up at 4 in the morning to pray the Stations of the Cross in his own home before heading to work. He donated generously to the parish and to the poor. But there was something no one noticed, something not even John could identify within himself. Behind all that external devotion existed an emptiness that he never admitted. Everything shifted in March of 1954 when John decided to make a pilgrimage to San Giovanni Rotondo to confess to Padre Pio. He had heard stories about the stigmatized saint, about his ability to read souls, about the miracles that surrounded him. But John wasn't seeking miracles. He merely desired the blessing of a holy man, a kind of divine confirmation that his spiritual life was on the right track. The journey lasted 2 days. John arrived at the monastery already weary but filled with anticipation. There was an enormous line of people waiting to confess to Padre Pio, men and women of all ages. The sick seeking healing, sinners seeking forgiveness, the curious seeking a miracle. John waited patiently for nearly 8 hours. When his turn finally arrived, he entered the confessional with a tranquil heart. After all, he was a good Catholic. He had no serious sins to confess. His confession would be quick and simple. He began in the traditional manner. "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It has been 2 weeks since my last confession. I accuse myself of losing patience with my wife 3 times, of speaking ill of a neighbor, of harboring thoughts of envy when I saw a colleague's new house. Padre Pio remained silent for a long moment. John awaited the absolution he always received from his local parish priest, but it did not come. Instead, Padre Pio posed a question that John had never encountered in any previous confession. "John, when was the last time you truly spoke with God?" The question seemed peculiar. John pondered for a moment and replied confidently, "Father, I pray every day. I recite the rosary every night before bed. I pray the Angelus at noon. I pray before meals. I pray at Mass on Sundays." Padre Pio sighed deeply and then uttered the words that would change John's life forever. "My son, I didn't ask when you repeat words. I asked when you spoke with God. These are completely different things." John was confused. He didn't understand the distinction. To him, praying and talking to God were one and the same. Padre Pio continued with a firm yet compassionate voice. "I can see your soul, John. I can see 40 years of prayers that never ascended to heaven, 40 years of empty words that fell to the ground before reaching the Father's ears. You moved your lips millions of times, but your heart remained silent." John felt the blood run cold in his veins. How was this possible? He had dedicated so much time to prayer. He had sacrificed so much. He had followed all the rules. Padre Pio explained with fatherly patience. "When you recite the rosary at night, where is your mind? Are you contemplating the mysteries of Christ's life? Are you pondering the love of the Virgin Mary? Or is your mind making grocery lists, planning the next day's work, replaying past arguments?" John lowered his head in shame. Padre Pio had described exactly what happened. He recited the Hail Marys while thinking about 1,000 other things. The words escaped his lips automatically, while his mind wandered through worldly worries. "Do you understand now?" asked Padre Pio. "A prayer without attention is not prayer. It's merely noise. It's like sending a letter without writing anything inside the envelope. The recipient receives only blank paper." "But I always thought the important thing was the intention," argued John. "I have the intention to pray. I want to honor God." "Intention is the beginning," replied Padre Pio, "but it cannot be the end. If you invite a friend for dinner and then spend the entire meal talking on the phone with other people, completely ignoring your guest, would you say you honored them? Would you say you were a good host, just because you had the intention of receiving them well?" John finally began to grasp the gravity of the problem. All those hours he thought he was in prayer were actually hours of absence. His body was present, but his soul was elsewhere. Padre Pio then revealed something even more disturbing. The problem isn't just that your prayers aren't reaching God. The problem is what this practice does to your soul over time. When you repeat sacred words without paying attention, you're training your heart to treat God with indifference. You're creating a barrier between your soul and the Creator, a barrier made of thousands of empty prayers stacked one on top of the other. And the worst part, continued Padre Pio, is that you don't realize it. You look outward and see all the appearances of a devout life, attending Mass, observing Lent, performing devotions, but inside, where it really matters, there's a desert where there should be a flourishing garden. John started to cry. Silent tears that carried 40 years of illusion. He had built an entire spiritual life on foundations of sand. All the pride he felt in his devotion turned into profound shame. But Padre Pio wasn't finished. He was about to reveal something that few Catholics have ever heard, the true nature of real prayer, and how it differs from that mechanical prayer that so many practice without realizing it. "Listen carefully, John," Padre Pio said. "What I'm about to tell you might seem simple, but it's one of the greatest secrets of the spiritual life. A secret that the saints knew, but that few teach with clarity. True prayer doesn't begin with words. It begins with silence, not just outward silence, but inner silence. That moment when you completely empty your mind of all worries, plans, memories, and worldly desires. It's in this silence that God can finally speak. Most people, Padre Pio continued, treat prayer like a shopping list to deliver to God. They come, they dump their needs, and they leave. They never stop to listen. They never allow God to answer. But prayer is a conversation, and in every true conversation, there's speaking and listening. If you talk all the time without ever stopping to listen, you're not conversing. You're just giving a monologue. John asked, "But how can I hear God? He doesn't speak with an audible voice." Padre Pio smiled slightly. God speaks in many ways, through thoughts that arise out of nowhere during prayer, through feelings of peace or unrest in your heart, through passages of scripture that suddenly take on new meaning, through circumstances in life that seem to coincide with your prayers. But to hear any of these voices, you need to first make silence. You need to stop the constant chatter of your mind. You need to be truly present in the moment of prayer. Padre Pio then gave John a practical teaching that would completely change the way he prayed. When you go to pray the rosary tonight, don't immediately start reciting the prayers. First, sit in silence for a few minutes, close your eyes, breathe deeply, and say just one thing: Lord, I am here, I am present. I want to be with you in this moment. Then continue sitting in silence. Don't ask for anything. Don't plan anything. Just be present, as if you were sitting next to a dear friend in a moment of tranquility. Only after this moment of silence, when you feel that your mind has calmed and your heart is open, begin to pray. And even while you pray, keep part of your attention on the meaning of the words. If you notice that your mind has wandered, don't condemn yourself. Simply bring your attention back gently. But pay attention, Padre Pio warned. In the beginning, this will seem very difficult. Your mind will resist. It's used to wandering freely during prayer. It will try to convince you that you're wasting time, that it would be more productive to pray quickly and go do other things. Don't listen to that voice. It's the voice of the enemy, who doesn't want you to develop a true relationship with God. He prefers that you continue with your empty prayers, prayers that don't bother hell, because they never reach heaven. John left that confessional transformed. He spent the following days in San Giovanni Rotondo, practicing what Padre Pio had taught. And for the first time in 40 years, he experienced something he had never experienced before. Peace. Not just the absence of worry, but a deep peace that seemed to come from outside of him, a gentle presence that enveloped his soul during prayer. He finally understood what it meant to converse with God. But John's story reveals only one part of the problem that Padre Pio saw in the souls of the Catholics who came to him. There was something even more disturbing that he discovered over his years hearing confessions. Something that affected not only individuals, but entire communities of the faithful, the phenomenon that Padre Pio called a facade of piety. These were people like John, who fulfilled all the external requirements of the faith, but had their hearts completely disconnected from God. And the scariest thing was that many of them had no idea of their condition. They lived in the illusion that they were right with God simply because they followed the rules. Padre Pio compared this situation to a marriage where the spouses live in the same house but haven't communicated for years. They share the same roof, the same meals, the same bed, but between them there's an abyss of indifference. They fulfill their marital obligations mechanically, without love, without true connection. That's how many Catholics live their relationship with God, Padre Pio explained. They fulfill the obligations of the faith out of habit, out of tradition, out of social pressure, but there's no love. There's no real desire to be with God. There's no joy in prayer. And when there's no love, the saint warned, there's great danger, because God doesn't want our empty rituals. He wants our hearts. And if we offer only rituals while keeping our hearts for other things, we're committing a subtle form of idolatry. We're putting other things in the place that belongs only to God. This truth that Padre Pio revealed has tremendous consequences for the spiritual life, and it also has eternal consequences that few Catholics dare to contemplate. Because there's an inevitable question that arises from this revelation. If my prayers have never truly reached God, what will happen to my soul? Padre Pio was very clear about this, and what he said might seem harsh, but it's the truth that every Catholic needs to hear. There are many souls in purgatory, he would say, who spent their entire lives praying without really praying. They fulfilled all the external obligations of the faith. They went to Mass, they recited rosaries, they made novenas, but their hearts never truly opened to God. These souls aren't condemned to hell because they didn't commit mortal sins of malice, but they're also not ready for heaven because they never developed a genuine relationship with God. They knew the religion, but they didn't know the Lord. And now they suffer in purgatory, not only for the sins they committed, but for the love they failed to give, for the time they squandered on empty prayers when they could have been truly present with God. This revelation from Padre Pio leads us to a profound self-examination, because if this happened to people who appeared to live devout lives, it could be happening to us too. How often do we pray on autopilot? How often is our body in church, but our mind is somewhere else? How often do we open our mouths to say sacred word while our hearts remain closed? Padre Pio knew this problem well, because he himself had to learn to overcome it in his youth. Before becoming the great mystic the world knew, he too struggled with distraction in prayer. He also had to discipline his rebellious mind, which wanted to wander along worldly paths when it should have been focused on God. In his spiritual letters, Padre Pio described this struggle with brutal honesty. "In the beginning of my religious life," he wrote, "I thought I was praying well, simply because I spent many hours before the Blessed Sacrament. But many of those hours were wasted on mental wanderings. My body was in the chapel, but my soul wandered to distant places. It was only when I understood that the quality of prayer matters more than the quantity that my spiritual life began to transform. A single Hail Mary prayed with a fully present heart is worth more than 1,000 rosaries recited with a distracted mind." This truth that Padre Pio discovered is present throughout the Catholic spiritual tradition. Saint Teresa of Avila wrote extensively about the dangers of mechanical prayer. Saint John of the Cross warned against the illusion of spiritual progress, based only on external practices. Saint Augustine confessed his own struggles with distraction during prayer. But perhaps no saint has been as direct as Padre Pio in confronting Catholics with this uncomfortable truth. Because while other saints wrote spiritual treatises that few read, Padre Pio confronted people face to face in the confessional, and he was not afraid to tell hard truths. One particularly striking episode happened in 1961 when a bishop came to confession with Padre Pio. This bishop was known for his outward piety. He prayed the breviary every day without fail. He celebrated Mass with great solemnity. He was admired by his clergy and his flock. But when he entered Padre Pio's confessional, he encountered something unexpected. Padre Pio interrupted him before he could finish his confession. "Your Excellency," said the saint with respect, but firmness, "before you continue, I need to ask you something. When you celebrate Holy Mass, where is your heart?" The bishop was surprised by the question. He replied that it was there, at the altar, celebrating the sacred mysteries. Padre Pio shook his head slowly. "No, Your Excellency. I can see during the consecration, when you should be completely absorbed in the miracle that happens in your hands. Your mind is thinking about the sermon you will preach later, or the meeting you have in the afternoon, or the problems of the diocese. The bishop turned pale. Padre Pio had described exactly what was happening. Years of priestly routine had transformed the celebration of Mass into something almost automatic. He performed all the gestures, pronounced all the words, but was rarely truly present to the mystery he celebrated. "Do you understand what this means?" asked Padre Pio. "You hold in your hands the body of Christ, the same body that suffered on the cross for our sins. And while you hold this priceless treasure, your mind is somewhere else. What kind of love is that?" The bishop began to cry. Not tears of offense for having been confronted, but tears of shame for having been discovered, and tears of gratitude, because finally someone had the courage to tell him the truth. Padre Pio did not tell this story to humiliate that bishop. He told it to warn us that no one is immune to this problem. No matter how high our position in the church, no matter how many years we have of religious practice, we can all fall into the trap of empty prayer. And now you may be wondering, but why does this happen? Why is it so difficult to keep the mind focused during prayer? Padre Pio had a clear answer for that, and the answer may surprise you. There are 3 enemies of true prayer, he explained. The first is the world, with all its distractions. The second is the flesh, with all its restlessness. But the third and most dangerous is the devil, who works tirelessly to interrupt our communion with God. Yes, Padre Pio stated categorically, that distractions during prayer often have demonic origins. Not all of them. Of course, some are simply the result of our scattered human nature, but many are planted deliberately by the enemy to prevent us from making spiritual progress. He compared the situation to a battle. When you kneel down to pray, Padre Pio told a group of faithful, you are entering enemy territory. The devil knows that prayer is your most powerful weapon against him. That's why he does everything to prevent you from praying effectively. His tactics are subtle. He doesn't appear with horns and a fiery tail to scare you. That would be too obvious. Instead, he whispers seemingly harmless thoughts into your mind, reminds you of something you need to do later, brings to mind an old conversation that irritated you, makes you think about problems you can't solve at that moment. And every time you follow those thoughts, you stop praying. Even if you continue moving your lips, your soul is no longer in prayer. It is trapped in the cobwebs that the enemy has woven around your mind. This perspective of Padre Pio on distractions in prayer completely changes how we should deal with them. If they are just human weakness, we can treat them with relative tranquility. But if they are spiritual attacks, we need to combat them with a warrior's determination. And Padre Pio taught practical methods to win this battle. The first method he called the anchor of the present. Whenever you notice that your mind has wandered during prayer, do not despair. Do not condemn yourself. Simply say mentally, I am here, now, before God, and bring your attention back to the present moment. It's like an anchor that you cast to prevent the boat of your mind from being carried away by the currents of distraction. The more you practice this movement of return, the stronger your ability to remain present will become. The second method, Padre Pio called incarnate prayer. Instead of praying only with the mind, involve your whole body in prayer. Kneel down when you pray, if your health allows. Join your hands. Close your eyes. Bow your head. When your body takes on a posture of prayer, it sends signals to your mind that something important is happening. It becomes more difficult for the mind to wander when the body is fully engaged in the act of praying. The third method is slow vocal prayer. Many Catholics pray too fast. They rattle off the words as if they're in a rush to finish. But Padre Pio taught the opposite. Pray slowly, very slowly. Feel the weight of each word before moving on to the next. When you say Hail Mary, pause for a moment. Think about who Mary is. Think about the honor it is to greet her. Then say, full of grace. Pause again. What does it mean to be full of grace? What does that reveal about her? Continue like this, word by word, mystery by mystery, A single Hail Mary prayed in this way can take several minutes, but it will be a prayer that truly reaches heaven. It will be a genuine conversation with the Mother of God, not just an automatic repetition of sounds. The fourth method, Padre Pio reserved for the most difficult cases. He called it a holy interruption. When you realize you're completely unable to focus, don't force it. Stop the prayer for a moment, be silent, and simply say to God, Lord, my mind is scattered, I can't concentrate, but I'm here. Help me to be present with you. This simple prayer of surrender often opens the door to a concentration that previously seemed impossible because it acknowledges our weakness and invites God to act where we fail. Padre Pio also warned about a common mistake that many make when trying to solve the problem of distractions. They try to eliminate all distractions before they begin to pray. That's impossible, he said. As long as we're alive in this world, we'll have distractions. The goal isn't to eliminate distractions, it's to learn to pray despite them. It's to develop the ability to bring your mind back to focus whenever it wanders. The great saints weren't people without distractions. They were people who learned to deal with distractions without giving up. Saint Teresa of Avila confessed that she spent years struggling against a scattered mind during prayer, but she persevered and eventually reached states of prayer so deep that she received visions and ecstasies. Padre Pio also experienced these heightened states of prayer, but he never forgot where he had started, and that's why he had so much compassion for the faithful who struggled with the same problem. Don't be discouraged, he often said. The struggle for true prayer is a lifelong struggle. There will be days when you pray with ease and clarity, and there will be days when every word feels like an enormous weight. Both kinds of days are part of the journey. What matters isn't whether you had distractions. What matters is whether you kept trying despite them. God doesn't expect perfection from us. He expects perseverance. This message of hope balanced the harsh confrontation that Padre Pio used against empty prayer. He didn't want to discourage people. He wanted to awaken them to the reality of their spiritual situation and then give them the tools to improve. And the tools worked. John, the man whose story we began to tell, became a living testament to that. After his confession with Padre Pio, he returned to his town and began to apply everything he had learned. At first it was difficult. 40 years of habit don't disappear in a day, but John persevered. Every night, before praying the rosary, he would be silent for a few minutes. He took a deep breath. He said to God, I am here. The first few weeks were a constant struggle. His mind resisted the new discipline. It wanted to go back to the old way of praying quickly and go do other things. But John remembered Padre Pio's words and kept trying. After about 2 months, something started to change. The distractions became less frequent. The moments of true presence became longer, and John began to experience something he had never known before. A gentle joy during prayer, a feeling that he was no longer alone, a peace that remained even after the prayer ended. He returned to San Giovanni Rotondo a year later to thank Padre Pio. The saint greeted him with a smile. I know, said Padre Pio before John could even speak, I can see the difference in your soul. It's no longer empty. There's light there now. There's presence. John wept with gratitude, and Padre Pio gave him one last piece of advice. Never think you've reached the final destination. The life of prayer is a never-ending journey. There's always more depth to explore. There's always more intimacy with God to achieve. Keep walking, keep praying, keep seeking. This story of John represents the hope that exists for all of us, no matter how long we've spent in empty prayers, no matter how mechanical our spiritual life has become. Transformation is always possible, but it requires honesty. The same brutal honesty that Padre Pio demonstrated. We need to look at our prayer life without illusions and ask, am I really talking to God or just moving my lips? If you recognize in yourself the same problem that John had, don't despair. You're not alone. Millions of Catholics around the world face the same struggle. The difference between those who overcome and those who remain trapped lies in the willingness to change. And the change starts now, not tomorrow, not next week, now. If you could do just one thing differently in your next prayer, Padre Pio would recommend this. Be silent before you begin. Not just an external silence, but an internal silence. Let all worldly thoughts subside, and then, from the depths of your heart, say, Lord, I am here. I want to be with you. That simple practice, repeated day after day, can completely transform your spiritual life. It can open doors you didn't even know existed. It can introduce you to a God that you knew by name, but had never truly encountered. Padre Pio dedicated more than 50 years of his life to teaching this truth. He heard thousands of confessions. He confronted countless souls with the reality of their spiritual condition, and he offered each of them the same path back to God. Some listened and changed, others resisted and remained in the darkness of their own illusion. The choice they made determined the eternal destiny of their souls. The same choice is before you now. You can continue as before. You can say your mechanical prayers and convince yourself that everything is fine. You can live in the illusion that your external practices are enough. Or you can hear the voice of Padre Pio echoing through the decades. You can accept the uncomfortable truth that he proclaimed, and you can begin today the path of transformation that leads to true union with God. The decision is yours. But remember the words that Padre Pio spoke to John in that confessional over 70 years ago. You have never truly prayed in your entire life. Let those words not be spoken about you when you stand before the throne of God. At this moment, you have the chance to change, to start anew, to learn how to truly pray. For the first time, Padre Pio intercedes for all those who sincerely seek to transform their prayer life. Ask him to grant you the grace of true presence before God. Ask him to ward off the distractions that the enemy places in your path. Ask him to teach you to converse with the Father as he conversed, and then be silent. Take a deep breath and say, Lord, I am here. That is how true prayer begins. That is how an authentic spiritual life begins. That is how the journey to heaven begins. If these words have touched your heart in some way, if you felt that this message was for you, then know that this channel exists to bring spiritual revelations that can transform lives. Each video we produce requires in-depth research into the works of Padre Pio, into church documents, into the testimonies of those who knew him. The Super Thanks button that appears just below this video is a way for you to join this mission. It's not just financial support. It's you saying that these truths need to continue being proclaimed. It's you becoming part of a community that seeks authentic Catholic spirituality. Padre Pio used to say that those who help spread divine truth receive special blessings. When you click that golden heart, you're not just supporting a channel. You're becoming an instrument of evangelization. You're helping other souls discover what you have discovered today. You don't need to give much. Whatever amount your heart suggests is sufficient. The important thing is the gesture. It's the intention to be part of something larger than yourself. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had the experience of praying on autopilot? Have you ever had that feeling of finishing a prayer without remembering anything you said? Or perhaps you've experienced moments of true presence before God and want to share what that was like. Tell your story in the comments below. Be honest, be true, because your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to take the first step toward transformation. Padre Pio left us a treasure of spiritual wisdom that is still being uncovered, and the more Catholics who know these teachings, the more souls will be saved from the trap of empty piety. May Our Lady, whom Padre Pio loved so deeply, intercede for us all. May she teach us to pray as she prayed, with a heart completely open, with a soul totally present, with true love for her Son. And may Padre Pio, from heaven where he now dwells, continue to guide the souls who sincerely seek God. May he ward off distractions. May he strengthen our concentration. May he lead us ever deeper into the mystery of true prayer. Amen.